So imagine waking up.
Okay.
The very first sliver of morning light hits the room, and before your eyes even adjust, I mean, before your feet even hit the floorboards, you just feel it.
Oh, yeah. That weight.
Exactly. That immediate, just crushing weight pressing down on your chest. You haven't even, poured a cup of coffee yet, and you are already structurally exhausted.
You're tired before the day even actually begins.
Right. You are trapped in this endless cycle of exertion, just toiling continuously through the relentless rotation of the sun and the moon.
It's like you're fiercely chasing a horizon that never actually gets closer to you.
Yes, that is exactly what it feels like. Maybe that horizon is, I don't know, a massive career milestone or a vision of a perfectly peaceful relationship.
Or just some impenetrable fortress of financial security,
Right. So you wake up, you grip the oars, and you row with this agonizing intensity. But the shoreline, it just doesn't move.
Not an inch.
You put in a monumental magnitude of effort, right? Yet you feel like this tiny, fragile vessel just getting tossed around in a vast, violent tempest.
It's terrifying.
It really is. And the core confusion here is, why does a greater intensity of struggle not yield a calmer sea? Like, why does the storm feel like it's actually following you, no matter how furiously you try to escape it?
Well, it's because we operate under this fundamental, culturally enforced assumption.
Which is what?
That if we just exert enough kinetic energy, if we battle the elements with enough ferocity, we will eventually breach the storm. We'll find tranquil waters.
Like we can just beat the universe into submission.
Exactly. We treat life as this war of attrition. But what if the storm is not a meteorological event happening to you?
Okay, what do you mean?
What if the turbulence is actually a reflection of the internal state from which you're operating?
Oh, wow. That's a heavy thought.
Right. So today, we are synthesizing a vast constellation of behavioral psychology, cognitive science, and, ancient philosophical frameworks to figure out why we are all just so thoroughly exhausted.
Okay, let's set the agenda here. Our mission for this session is to explore the ultimate architecture of human consciousness.
I love that.
We are dismantling the illusion of this external storm that we have all been fighting our entire lives. We are going to reveal how an internal shift in our fundamental focus completely, redraws the map of our reality.
And we're keeping this entirely grounded.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to look at the actual cognitive mechanics of why we sabotage ourselves, how our brains filter reality to keep us trapped on this existential treadmill.
Right, and more importantly, how to rewrite that foundational code. We are moving away from the exhaustion of survival mechanics and stepping into, the physics of conscious creation.
Which requires looking at the tempest through an entirely different lens.
So where do we start?
Well, as long as we believe we are separate from the storm, as long as we believe we are victims of an external chaos that we just have to overpower through sheer grit.
We're locked in.
Exactly. We are locked into a perpetual state of resistance. And resistance generates friction.
And friction generates heat.
Heat, emotional exhaustion, and ultimately a sinking ship.
Which is what everyone feels like they're on.
Right. To understand the alternative, we can look to this ancient universal allegory. It actually maps perfectly onto our modern neurological responses.
Okay, paint the picture for us.
So, picture a small group of travelers. They are caught in a furious, churning sea in the dead of night.
Sounds awful.
It is. The wind is howling, the wood of their small vessel is splintering, the waves are just towering over them.
Absolute nightmare scenario.
Totally. They are panicked, arguing bitterly amongst themselves, screaming over the roar of the ocean. They are convinced they are going to be swallowed by the abyss.
I mean, that is the absolute quintessential human reaction to adversity, right? Panic, blame, the desperate urge to find a scapegoat.
It is pure chaos.
But then suddenly, amidst the flashes of lightning, they perceive something impossible.
Right, off in the distance.
Yeah, off in the distance, there is this solitary silhouette, and this figure is moving effortlessly across the turbulent waters.
They aren't swimming frantically.
No, not at all. And they're not in a boat of their own either. They're simply gliding over the surface of the churning abyss, utterly unbothered by the chaos.
The wild image.
It is. The tempest is raging all around them, but the figure exists in this pocket of profound, impenetrable stillness.
And what's fascinating here is that the contrast is entirely about where attention is anchored.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, you have the travelers in the boat,
Yeah.
right? Their internal states are perfectly mirroring the external violence of the waves.
They're essentially becoming the storm.
Exactly. Their nervous systems are in absolute overdrive. And then you have this solitary figure who is physically in the exact same environment.
subject to the exact same atmospheric conditions.
Yes. Yet they are operating from a state of pure, undisturbed presence. They are emotionally detached from the swirling winds.
So they are fighting the storm.
No. They are simply refusing to participate in its frequency. They're not giving it their panic.
So the travelers in the boat, they are terrified at first, but then one of them is just overwhelmed by a desire to experience that stillness.
He wants what that figure has.
Right. So he calls out to the silhouette, and he steps over the edge of the splintering vessel. He attempts to mirror this profound stillness.
And incredibly, at first, he actually succeeds.
He does. He is standing on the churning water, suspended above the chaos.
Because in that singular initial moment, his entire conscious awareness is locked onto the embodiment of pure stillness.
He's not looking at the storm.
Exactly. He is acting not from the conditioned logic of fear, but from a sudden, absolute alignment with a steady internal state. He anchored his attention entirely away from the threat.
But then, of course, the predictable happens.
Always does.
The wind howls a little louder. A massive wave crashes near him, and the traveler makes a fatal error.
He shifts his focus.
Yes. He takes his eyes off the embodiment of pure stillness, and he looks down at the terrifying magnitude of the crashing waves beneath his feet.
And that's it.
That's the moment. The exact moment his focus shifts to the chaos, the exact moment he acknowledges the danger and buys back into the narrative of the tempest. He begins to sink.
The water swallows them.
He is flailing wildly, consumed by the storm he had just momentarily conquered, and he is only rescued when he completely surrenders his panic.
He throws his hand up.
Right. Absolutely exhausted, giving up the fight, and he realigns with that pure presence which just pulls him effortlessly back up.
If we strip away the metaphorical imagery here, we are looking at a masterclass in cognitive behavioral mechanics.
Oh, absolutely. Because the storm isn't just bad weather.
Not at all.
Yeah.
The storm represents the swirling anxieties, the crushing societal pressures, the toxic work environments.
The endless financial obligations.
Yes. All of our waking existence. It is the chaotic noise of the modern world constantly demanding a physiological reaction from you.
But the physical properties of the water in the story, they didn't change when the traveler sank.
No, the velocity of the wind didn't suddenly increase.
Right. The only variable that shifted was his internal point of focus.
Sinking into the water is what happens to us every single day.
Literally every day.
Sinking is the act of becoming emotionally attached to outcomes. It is allowing the external chaos to dictate our internal worth.
Like when you receive a vague, slightly passive-aggressive message from your boss late at night.
Oh, that's the worst. Your heart rate instantly spikes.
Exactly. In that moment, you are looking at the waves.
Or when you check your bank balance and just feel this wave of despair wash over your entire identity.
You are sinking into the churning water. You are essentially telling your brain, hey, this external circumstance is way more powerful than my internal state of being.
And your brain, being the obedient machine it is, complies.
How so?
Well, when you focus on the waves, your amygdala, that's the brain's threat detection center, it hijacks your nervous system.
It just takes over.
Completely. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
Your rational executive functioning basically shuts down.
You literally can't think straight.
Right. Reality immediately complies with your fear by putting you in a state of absolute survival mode. You are drowning in your own neurochemistry.
Wow.
The solitary figure in the allegory isn't waving a magic wand and making the clouds disappear.
Right. The storm is still there.
They are simply refusing to grant the external circumstance the authority to trigger their internal threat response.
They recognize that the external chaos is transient.
Transient and ultimately powerless over their core identity unless they consciously hand over the keys.
Okay, I hear the philosophy and it's beautiful, but my mind immediately goes to the practical reality of modern survival.
Sure.
Because the storm is real. If I just ignore the demands of my life, the bank is still going to foreclose on my house, right?
Yeah, for sure.
The obligations of the harvest are pressing down. The physical exhaustion is in my bones. So how does this philosophy survive contact with a society built on grinding? We can't just pretend the waves aren't going to drown us.
We are absolutely not pretending the waves aren't there. That is a dangerous, frankly, misinterpretation of this concept.
Good, because that would be a terrible strategy.
Ignoring the mortgage does not make the mortgage disappear. It just makes you homeless.
Right.
The distinction lies in the internal state from which you take action. You can pay the mortgage, you can navigate complex office politics, you can address the conflict in your relationship without having a concurrent panic attack.
So you separate the action from the anxiety.
Exactly. You can address the external reality without allowing it to annihilate your internal peace.
You know, it makes me think of wearing a pair of incredibly advanced, just flawless noise-canceling headphones.
Okay, I like this.
Picture being in the middle of a chaotic, neon-lit city gridlock. You are standing on a street corner, the sirens are wailing, the traffic is backed up for miles, people are shouting.
A total sensory overload.
Yeah. The physical sound waves are literally crashing against your body. The environment is undeniably frantic. But with those headphones actively running, your internal acoustic environment remains pristine.
You're completely insulated.
Right. You might be listening to a singular, beautiful note of a cello. You are entirely in the environment, without question. But you are definitively not of it.
You see the ambulance speeding by.
Exactly. You see it, you step out of its way, but the siren does not shatter your eardrums. The chaos cannot penetrate your internal architecture unless you consciously choose to take the headphones off.
The mechanics of active noise cancellation is actually a brilliant parallel for this cognitive process.
Really? How so?
Well, those headphones don't just put a physical block of phone over your ears. They actively listen to the chaotic frequencies of the outside world, and they generate an exact inverted frequency to neutralize the noise.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, they meet the chaos with an intentional balancing wave. Conscious awareness works the exact same way.
So it's an active process, not passive.
Exactly. When the external world throws a panic-inducing variable at you, a trained mind doesn't ignore it. It meets it with an internal wave of absolute stillness.
But most of us aren't doing that.
No. Most of us were walking through the city without the headphones, actively running toward the loudest sirens, allowing the noise to rattle our very bones. And then we wonder why we have a chronic migraine.
We study the sirens, we categorize them, we complain about the traffic jams to our friends.
We made that our whole personality.
Yes, we form entirely new social groups based around how terrible the noise is. We are compulsively staring at the waves.
It's an addiction to the struggle.
It really is. So if we apply the mechanics of this ancient allegory directly to our daily struggles, we have to look at the moment the drowning traveler throws his hand up.
That moment of surrender.
Right. The moment we reach a point of absolute exhaustion and finally say, I give up trying to control the uncontrollable.
And in that moment, we aren't giving up on life.
No, we are giving up the desperate need to micromanage the universe. We are putting our hand up to be pulled back into our core consciousness. We stop fighting the water and just let the buoyancy of our true nature lift us.
Which forces us to ask a critical question.
Okay, let's hear it.
If this inner stillness, this pristine internal acoustic environment, is our natural baseline, why do we compulsively take the headphones off?
That is the million-dollar question.
Why do we deliberately stare at the waves until we literally choke on the seawater?
Why do we do it?
To understand the compulsion to suffer, we have to trace the origin of the panic back to the earliest echoes of our existence.
You mean childhood?
Further back, even. Just the dawn of our development. We have been systematically taught to fear the water, and more insidiously, we have been taught that struggling against the water is the only noble way to live.
It's wild because the way we perceive our reality, the way we react to the storm, it feels completely spontaneous to us in the moment.
It feels like it's just who we are.
Right. When the boss sends that email, the panic feels entirely natural. But it isn't. It is heavily dictated by this invisible programming absorbed during the dawn of our life cycle.
We are talking about the period extending from our earliest, most vulnerable phases of development, when our brains were operating in entirely different electrical states.
What kind of states?
During that early dawn of development, our brains are primarily operating in highly receptive, slow wave frequencies.
Like a sponge.
Exactly. We do not possess the critical faculties to analyze, filter, or reject information. We are essentially walking around in a state of continuous, ambient hypnosis.
That's terrifying to think about.
It is. We simply absorb the frequency of the environment around us. We absorb the unspoken financial terrors of our caregivers.
The structural anxieties of our culture.
Yes, the collective trauma of our environment. We are handed a rigid set of narratives about how the world works, and we just swallow them whole.
Mistaking terrified opinions for objective, universal law.
Exactly.
And the narratives we are handed are almost universally anchored in struggle and scarcity.
Almost always.
We are fed these toxic little mantras disguised as wisdom. You know, things like, we must suffer to be worthy of a reward.
Or, endless bone-breaking toil is the only path to security.
Yeah. Or, perhaps the most damaging one, we may be deprived, the universe may be punishing us, but at least we are noble in our suffering.
It's a martyrdom complex.
It really is.
Romanticizing lack is a defense mechanism. It is a way to construct an identity around deprivation so that we don't have to take the terrifying psychological risk of actually claiming abundance.
Because claiming abundance feels dangerous if you're programmed for scarcity.
Exactly. Because of this early, uncritical absorption, the overwhelming majority of our adult existence is spent operating entirely unconsciously.
We think we're making choices, but we're just running a script.
Precisely. We're completely identified with a programmed voice in our head, a voice that was installed by adults who are also terrified of the storm.
It's generational terror.
Yes. And this internal narrator perpetually scans the horizon for danger, expects betrayal around every corner, and just fiercely argues with the present moment.
We grow up believing the storm is inevitable, and that fighting it until we literally bleed is the ultimate measure of our character.
It's the hard work equals luck myth.
Let's talk about that myth.
Hmm.
Society painstakingly programs us to believe that the hardest workers, the ones who suffer the most, who sweat the most, are universally rewarded with the greatest bounty.
We completely romanticize the grind.
But if we observe reality objectively without the lens of that programming, the equation completely falls apart.
It shatters.
Right. If sheer, grueling physical suffering were the actual key to immense bounty, the individuals performing the most back-breaking labor from dawn until dusk would possess the keys to the world.
They would be the undisputed architects of society.
Exactly.
And highlighting that discrepancy is not meant to diminish the dignity of labor at all.
No, not in the slightest.
It is meant to expose a systemic flaw in the algorithm we have been handed. The universe does not reward suffering.
Let me repeat that. The universe does not reward suffering.
There is no cosmic ledger keeping track of your exhaustion, just preparing to write you a check for your pain.
God, we really want there to be a ledger, don't we?
We do, but there isn't. Reality responds to your foundational alignment. When we operate from this early programming of endless toil, we are constantly arguing with the present moment.
We are radiating a frequency of deep deficit.
We are saying, I am here, but the thing I desire is over there, and I must bridge this massive, terrifying gap through sheer agony.
We fundamentally believe we are separate from the things we desire.
And this belief in separation forces us into a perpetual state of chasing, grinding, and just gasping for air.
We are trying to outrun our own shadow, and obviously you can never outrun it because it is tethered right to your own feet.
Exactly.
The narrative of you don't understand where I came from, or my background, my family's history prevents my success, this is revealed as a phantom barrier.
It's an illusion.
It is a story we fiercely protect to our own detriment. We defend the very cage that confines us because it is the only home we have ever known.
But if we recognize that our internal dialogue, that voice telling us to panic, to work harder, to fear the worst-case scenario, is essentially just a playback of ancient societal stress.
What happens?
We can finally begin to detach from it. We can observe the voice instead of obeying it.
You know, I think about this in technological terms.
I like your analogies today.
Thanks. This childhood programming is exactly like an invisible operating system running silently in the background of a computer.
Okay, track with me.
You have this incredibly powerful machine, your pure consciousness, your biological hardware. But installed deep in the foundational code is a corrupted operating system.
A virus, basically.
And this code is quietly, ruthlessly corrupting every new file you try to open. You try to open a new file called Joyful Relationship, and the operating system instantly injects a line of code that says, expect betrayal. You try to open a file called Financial Abundance, and the system injects, you are not worthy, danger.
It just crashes the program.
Exactly. The hardware is flawless, but the background process is draining the battery and crashing the programs before they can even run.
And how do most people address this? They spend their entire lives trying to fix the individual files.
They jump from one relationship to the next.
Trying to fix the relationship file. They change careers endlessly, trying to fix the financial file. They do all of this without ever realizing the foundational operating system itself is generating the errors.
They are furiously treating the symptoms while completely ignoring the disease.
So the natural pushback here, right, is about momentum.
Oh, yeah. People always ask about this.
If we stop struggling, if we stop grinding and delete this relentless operating system, how does anything actually get done?
Do we just sit on an empty couch, cross our legs, and wait for the harvest to magically leap out of the ground and onto our dinner table.
Right, if we drop the struggle, don't we just stagnate?
Which is a valid fear.
It is, but it requires a vital distinction between desperate, fear-driven action and inspired action. Dropping the struggle does not mean entering a state of catatonic passivity.
You still do things?
Of course. It just changes the origin point of your movement. When you are operating from the corrupted programming, you are taking action as a frantic cloud, trying desperately to blow itself away.
You are pushing, forcing, manipulating the environment.
It is exhausting, and it is usually met with massive resistance. You are essentially fighting the physics of your own reality.
But inspired action shifts the physics. Inspired action occurs when you operate from the calm, absolute knowing that you are the eternal sun behind the clouds.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
You recognize that the clouds, the temporary financial strain, the difficult conversation are just passing weather.
They do not diminish your inherent light or worth.
And from this state of knowing, action flows naturally. You still send the email, you still build the business, you still plant the seeds for the harvest.
But you do it without a shred of emotional desperation attached to the outcome.
You are moving in harmony with the environment rather than trying to wrestle it into submission.
It is the difference between swimming upstream against a raging current until your muscles tear versus building a sail, catching the wind, and letting the momentum carry you.
The action is still occurring.
The movement across the water is still happening. But the physical and emotional cost is practically zero.
Because when you remove the desperate attachment to the outcome, you remove the friction.
Exactly. The action becomes pure efficiency. You are acting out of an overflow of abundance rather than a deficit of fear.
So let's follow this logic all the way through.
Okay.
If dropping the struggle and aligning with this internal sun behind the clouds is the key, how dramatically can this alter the tangible reality we experience every day?
Immensely.
Like if we shift the foundational code of our internal operating system, what actually happens out there in the physical world?
It initiates a monumental phenomenon. We're talking about the complete reconstruction of internal value.
Explain that.
A profound architectural shift in your physical reality requires zero external changes to initiate.
Zero.
Zero. You do not need your boss to change. You do not need the economy to shift. You do not need your partner to apologize first.
So it's an entirely inside job.
Entirely. It is demonstrably possible to transition from a reality of earning a meager harvest, painfully drawn out over a full cycle of the seasons through blood and sweat, to reaping that exact same boundless bounty in the span of a single fleeting breath.
That is a massive claim. The exact same magnitude of reward that previously required an entire cycle of suffering can be accessed almost instantaneously.
Yes.
But the external world didn't suddenly get richer. The soil didn't suddenly change its chemical composition. What actually shifted in the mechanics of reality?
The only variable that changes is the internal belief regarding one's own identity.
Identity.
To understand this, we have to look at how the brain filters reality.
Okay, let's get into the cognitive science.
We are bombarded with billions of bits of sensory information every single second.
Far more than we can process.
Right. So our brains possess a filtering mechanism, a reticular activating system that acts as a bouncer for your consciousness.
A bouncer. I like that.
This system only lets information into your conscious awareness that aligns with your foundational beliefs.
So it rejects evidence to the contrary.
Exactly. The external world acts as a highly sensitive acoustic chamber that merely reflects the frequency of your internal convictions.
Meaning, if you fundamentally shift your identity from one who must suffer to earn a meager portion to one who is inherently worthy of boundless bounty, you literally reprogram the filter.
Yes. Your brain suddenly begins to perceive opportunities, pathways, and connections that were physically present the entire time.
But they were previously filtered out because they contradicted your core programming of scarcity.
Precisely. And the most immediate tangible evidence of this internal shift or the lack thereof is our language.
Language is huge here.
Speech is the direct, unedited image of the mind.
The words we vibrate out into the world reveal our truest inner alignment, the things we casually complain about over coffee.
The stories we repeat about our bad luck.
Yeah, the way we describe our exhaustion. We are actively casting a spell of scarcity over our own lives.
It's tragic, really.
If our vocabulary is dominated by, I can't, it's always a struggle, I'm exhausted, we are instructing our biological filter to seek out and magnify evidence of struggle and exhaustion.
We are manifesting a reality of lack through the sheer vibrational force of our own vocal cords.
Language is the bridge between immaterial thought and the material world.
When you listen to someone speak, you are hearing the exact architectural blueprint they're using to construct their reality.
Which brings us to the core concept of unshakable internal worth. True power, absolute sovereignty over your experience, requires letting the external world go hungry.
I love that phrase, letting the world go hungry.
Let's ground that. What does that actually look like when you walk into an office on a Tuesday morning?
It means we completely, unequivocally starve our need for external validation.
We stop begging.
Yes. We stop begging the external environment, our bosses, our social circles, the algorithm on our phones, to prove to us that we are enough.
We stop performing for scraps of approval.
Because when you require the world to validate you, you are a hostage to its unpredictable whims. Your emotional state is entirely dependent on forces outside your control.
Which is an exhausting way to live.
But when you let that need go hungry, when you generate that certainty of worth internally, the dynamic flips entirely.
The world responds differently.
When you no longer demand that the world prove your value, the world suddenly have no choice but to reflect that boundless value back to you. It rushes in to fill the vacuum of your certainty.
Because you have stopped chasing it.
Exactly.
When you desperately chase something, you are continuously sending the psychological and behavioral signal that it is running away from you.
You are confirming its absence.
If you hold a core belief that you must prove yourself to a perceived higher authority or to some invisible external force-keeping score, your reality will continuously generate scenarios where you are forced to prove yourself.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You will chronically attract critical managers, demanding partners, and constantly moving goalposts.
The universe is a very literal mechanism.
It says, your core identity is based around the act of proving yourself. Here is an endless series of impossible tests to fulfill your identity.
We can expose this hidden programming with a very simple thought experiment.
Okay, let's do it.
Consider the involuntary physiological reaction to claiming immense value. Imagine a scenario right now.
Listener, try this with us.
What if someone walks into the room, looks you directly in the eye, and proposes that you are inherently worthy of an astronomical reward?
A bounty beyond your wildest comprehension.
And they emphasize this is not a reward for your labor. It's not compensation for your suffering. It is simply a recognition of your mere presence.
Just for existing.
Right. Pay very close attention to what happens in your physical body in that exact split second.
For the overwhelming majority of people, the reaction is not profound resonance.
It's violent rejection.
Yes. Your chest tightens, your throat constricts. An internal voice immediately screams, "Imposter!"
You feel a wave of guilt.
Or disbelief, or acute anxiety. You immediately start calculating all the logical reasons why you do not deserve it.
I haven't worked hard enough for that.
People will judge me.
I am not qualified.
But this catch, that split-second visceral nervous system reaction, that is the exact boundary of your programmed identity.
That is the invisible electric fence you have built around your own worth.
That physical tightness is the corrupted operating system throwing a massive error code.
You attempted to open a file of immense abundance that completely contradicts its baseline programming of scarcity.
And the rejection is biological proof of the limitation you have accepted. You physically, neurologically cannot tolerate the frequency of that magnitude of bounty.
So how do we bypass that electric fence?
Yeah, how do we rewrite the code without getting electrocuted?
Well, you look at it like tuning an old-school analog radio dial.
Okay, I can picture that.
Think about the room you are sitting in right now. It appears silent, but in reality, the air is thick, saturated with a vast constellation of different frequencies.
The music of a jazz station, a classical station, a rock station, it is all already in the room, flying through the air invisibly.
You don't have to assemble the musicians. You don't have to build a radio tower. You don't have to create the music from scratch.
The reality you want already exists in the field of potential.
You simply have to turn your internal dial to match the specific frequency of the station you want to hear.
The reality of boundless bounty is already broadcasting. It occupies the exact same space as your current reality of struggle.
The only difference is the channel your internal receiver is locked onto.
You tune that dial through deliberate internal occupation of the state. When you go to sleep at night, as you drift into that highly receptive, slow-wave twilight state, you must inhabit the vision of the reality you desire.
And this is where almost everyone gets it wrong. You cannot look at it from the outside.
Right, you can't be a spectator gazing wistfully through a window at the life you want, watching some future version of yourself enjoying the bounty.
Because if you look at it, you are affirming separation.
You are tuning the dial to the frequency of yearning.
And yearning is a state of lack.
Yeah.
When you vibrate at the frequency of yearning, the mirror of reality simply reflects more yearning back to you. You remain in a perpetual state of wanting.
You must view the world from inside that identity.
You must feel the texture of the clothes that version of you wears.
You must feel the profound physical relief in your chest. You must look out at the world through the eyes of the person who has already achieved that unshakable internal worth.
You inhabit the identity. You claim the frequency.
When you inhabit it consistently, your neurological filter changes. The external reality, the mirror, must eventually adjust to reflect the new image.
It is an unavoidable mechanical process.
However, this brings us to the ultimate conflict of the human experience.
Here we go.
If tuning the dial is all it takes to shift from a reality of agonizing scarcity to one of boundless bounty, what is the invisible, relentless force that keeps reaching over our shoulder, slapping our hand away, and violently turning our dial back to static?
It is the ultimate saboteur.
The ego.
The force that constantly obsessively pulls us out of alignment is the ego. And we have to completely dismantle our understanding of the ego because it is the phantom opponent in this entire journey.
The ego is inherently structurally dysfunctional. It cannot exist in an environment of peace.
It survives, quite literally, by creating enemies and arguing vehemently with the present moment.
If everything is fine, if the present moment is accepted exactly as it is, without resistance, the ego has no job.
It begins to dissolve.
Therefore, survival depends on manufacturing conflict.
The ego is the ultimate drama farmer.
Yes. It's like that one person who thrives on group chat drama. If there isn't a massive crisis, the ego will literally invent one.
It will agonize over whether a coworker's use of a period in a message was passive-aggressive.
It needs a crisis to feel relevant, and it thrives on an imaginary present. The ego never, ever lives in the actual physical now.
Never. It is either dwelling obsessively on the ghosts of the past,
nursing old wounds, replaying embarrassments, cultivating bitterness over ancient betrayals,
or it is projecting desperately into a phantom future, anticipating disaster, mapping out anxieties, and preparing for battles that haven't even happened.
It oscillates wildly between regret and anxiety, deliberately bypassing the only space where actual tangible power resides, the present heartbeat.
There is a profound metaphor that perfectly encapsulates the ego's trap.
Let's hear it.
Imagine walking down a dusty road and seeing an ancient tavern. Hanging above the door is a brightly painted sign that reads, "Free refreshment tomorrow."
It is the ultimate hook. You think, amazing, all my thirst will be quenched, all my desires will be met tomorrow.
So the weary traveler rests, waits out the night, and returns the next day, eager to finally receive the bounty.
They walk up to the tavern keeper and ask for the free refreshment. And the tavern keeper simply smiles, points back up at the sign and says, read the sign.
Free refreshment tomorrow.
Tomorrow never arrives.
Tomorrow is a conceptual illusion. The ego operates exactly like this tavern sign.
It continually promises peace, satisfaction, and worthiness, but only after the next condition is met.
You will finally be happy after you get the promotion.
You will finally feel secure after you buy the house.
You will finally be at peace after you move to a new city.
But the exact moment you achieve those milestones, the ego instantly repaints the sign. The horizon recedes.
The goalpost moves. It ensures you remain thirsty.
The ego is a con artist running a perpetual Ponzi scheme on your happiness. To understand the illusion of its power, we can look at the sky.
Think of the pure light of your consciousness, your true self, your undisturbed presence as the sun.
It is self-sustaining, brilliant, and infinitely powerful.
The ego, however, is like a celestial satellite, like the moon. It is essentially a barren rock.
It possesses absolutely no inner fire, no luminescence, no light of its own. It merely reflects the pure light of your consciousness.
It intercepts your conscious energy, reflects it back as fear, pride, or anxiety, and it desperately tries to convince you that it is the source of the illumination.
It wants you to believe that the panicked, calculating voice of the ego is the profound voice of your soul.
But it is just a cold rock stealing your light.
That is a staggering realization. We are constantly feeding our life force, our attention to this dead satellite.
And the ego uses that stolen energy to keep us focused on the absolute wrong things, Let's look at the metaphor of a ship's wake.
Okay, picture a massive vessel moving through the ocean.
The wake is the trailing, turbulent water left behind by the moving ship. It is the foam, the churn, the visual history of exactly where the ship has been.
The ego is obsessively, pathologically fixated on the wake. The wake represents our past.
It represents our traumas, our failures, the betrayals we have suffered, the narrative of who we were.
The ego points at that violent, trailing water and tries to convince us that the wake is what is propelling the ship forward.
It tells us, your past pain is the engine of your life. Your history dictates your trajectory.
But logically, physically, that is an impossibility. The trailing water has absolutely zero kinetic power to move the vessel.
The wake is just a byproduct.
The ship is only ever powered by the internal engine operating in the absolute, undeniable present moment. The past has no power over the present unless you consciously, deliberately connect the engine to the wake.
Which perfectly explains one of the most common and tragic human fallacies. The geographical cure.
Oh, we see this constantly.
People pack up their lives, they change cities, they abandon relationships, they switch careers entirely, operating under the profound delusion that the external environment is the source of their misery.
If I just move to the coast, I'll be at peace.
If I just leave this company, my anxiety will vanish.
But the reality is, wherever you go, there you are. You pack up all your boxes, you hire the moving truck, and right there in the passenger seat is your unhealed ego, clutching that corrupted operating system.
You simply transcore your internal frequency to a new geographical coordinate.
You change the backdrop of the stage, but you are running the exact same script. Ultimately, you will recreate the exact same conflicts, attract the exact same toxic archetypes, and generate the exact same tempest, just with a different background view.
You didn't change the radio dial. You just moved the radio to a different room.
Now, an important distinction must be made here because the ego is incredibly cunning at defending itself. It will try to convince you that it is biologically necessary.
That is the ultimate pushback.
Doesn't the ego keep me safe? If I don't have an ego, won't I just walk off a cliff? Doesn't it tell me when to run away from an actual physical fire?
We must vehemently differentiate between the pure biological instinct of survival and the psychological construct of the ego.
Right. Pure instinct exists entirely in the absolute now.
If a physical threat appears in your immediate environment, a speeding car heading toward you, your biological hardware takes over.
Adrenaline spikes, reflexes engage, you jump out of the way.
That requires zero ego. A deer dodging a falling branch does not consult its ego. It simply acts in the present moment to preserve its life.
Instinct is the body reacting to immediate physics. It is a brilliant, necessary system.
Yes. The ego, however, is a psychological obsession. It has nothing to do with immediate physical safety.
The ego is obsessed with settling old scores.
It is obsessed with protecting a fragile, entirely fabricated narrative of identity.
The ego is the voice that replays a minor, awkward conversation from 5 years ago while you were trying to fall asleep, flooding your body with the exact same stress hormones you would feel if you were being chased by a predator.
The ego hijacks the biological alarm system to fight phantoms.
It is profoundly structurally exhausting. Living under the dictatorship of the ego is like trying to grip a handful of rushing river water.
You want the water, you want to hold on to it, you want to control the flow.
So you plunge your hand into the river, and you clench your fist as tightly as you possibly can. But the tighter you clench, the faster the water slips through your fingers.
The pressure of your own disparate grip forces the water away.
You are left with an empty, aching hand, exhausted from the effort.
The desperate attempt to control is the very mechanism of loss.
But look at what happens when you change your approach. You place your hand into the exact same rushing river, but this time, you keep your palm completely open and relaxed.
You offer no resistance to the current.
And what happens? The water rests within your hand peacefully. It pools in your palm. By relinquishing the desperate need to grip, you actually retain the very thing you were trying to hold.
An open hand is the absolute antithesis of the ego. It is a state of profound trust and alignment with the flow of reality.
It is the solitary figure gliding effortlessly over the deep.
Which brings us to the broader reflection of this entire journey.
If we pull all these threads together, the tempest, the corrupted operating system, the radio dial, the open head, the overarching realization is staggering.
We are fundamentally not designed to be rigid defensive structures.
We are not meant to be constantly braced for impact, constantly battered by the winds of circumstance. We are not meant to be fortresses, terrified of the siege.
We are meant to be like the water itself, fluid, ungraspable, endlessly adaptable, and deeply undeniably present.
Water does not argue with the massive rock in its path. It simply flows around it, eventually smoothing the sharpest edges through persistent, effortless presence.
When we finally stop identifying with the turbulent waves on the surface,
When we stop believing the echoes of a programmed past telling us we must suffer to be worthy,
we unlock a staggering magnitude of human potential.
we cease to be victims of a chaotic, random universe. We transform. We step out of the tempest, we take off the heavy armor, and we become the quiet, masterful architects of our own experience.
It requires a profound, terrifying surrender, but the reward is total sovereignty.
And so this leaves us with a final paradigm-shifting inquiry for you to carry forward.
The ego has kept you endlessly busy. It has kept you exhausting your life force, preparing for a tomorrow that never arrives.
It has enlisted you in phantom battles to prove a worth you already inherently possess.
So if you were to make the radical choice to drop the heavy armor right now,
If you were to completely, entirely stop arguing with this exact, singular heartbeat of a moment,
where profound reality would finally have the space to rush in and fill the silence.